Hi there, Aaron Walter here. If you're hearing this, you're not currently on our premium subscriber feed. Design Better premium subscribers enjoy weekly episodes, 4 episodes per month in total, rather than 2, all ad-free and invitations to our monthly AMAs with the smartest folks in design and tech. You'll hear a preview of this episode, but if you'd like to hear the full conversation, please consider becoming a premium subscriber at designbetterpodcast.com/subscribe. It's just $7 a month, and it supports not only your personal growth, it also makes our work at Design Better possible. The podcast is available to everyone through our scholarship program. If you can't afford a subscription, email us at subscriptions@thecuriositydepartment.com, and we'll help you out.
There's nothing else. I mean, you can buy a great, finely tailored suit. You can even buy a wonderful car, a Porsche or a Mercedes or something that would, in theory, last, but it won't last like this, and it won't be on you and with you ever present the way that a watch is. And it also doesn't necessarily rely on you the same way that you rely on it. The symbiotic connection between a mechanical watch, man or woman, is just unparalleled.
I fell down a rabbit hole when the Apple Watch came out. I knew nothing about watches, their design history, and the immense investment of human effort that it's taken to engineer accurate timepieces until I bought an Apple Watch. I love wearing a watch, but notifications and tracking caused me to abandon it for something simpler and more mechanical. Anyone curious about watches will inevitably end up at Hodinkee.com. It's the premier publication about watches and the rich culture around them. Hodinkee was founded by Ben Clymer, who found his way into watches when his grandfather gave him an Omega watch right off of his wrist. It sparked not only a deep passion for watches, but a company that's built a community of enthusiasts around the world.
You might be thinking, watches are a strange topic for Design Better to cover, but they represent a beautiful intersection of design and technology that's been pursued for centuries. They're also one of the few transgenerational objects in our lives that connect us with the people we love, as Ben Clymer shared with us in our conversation. We also spoke with Ben about consulting with Jony Ive on Apple's watch design, Jony's deep dive into horology, how Ben went about creating such a compelling content brand, and his journey from being a founder and CEO back to being an individual contributor to the company he started. This is Design Better, where we explore creativity at the intersection of design and technology. I'm Eli Woolery.
And I'm Aaron Walter. To learn more about the benefits of being a premium Design Better subscriber, visit designbetterpodcast.com/subscribe. We'll return to the conversation after this quick break.
Support for Design Better comes from our friends at CrashPlan. Visit crashplan.com/designbetter for 50% off your first year of CrashPlan. From my daughter's first birthday to my son's first soccer game, if you're like me, you have thousands of precious family photos that only exist in digital form. That's why I've been using CrashPlan for a decade and a half now to back up all my important files. CrashPlan works efficiently in the background while you work, encrypting and sending all your new or changed files up to their secure cloud server every 15 minutes. And they make it simple to restore some or all of your data. And with unlimited version retention, CrashPlan can also be your ultimate rewind button. Businesses of all sizes benefit from CrashPlan's multi-tenant capabilities. Buy as many user licenses as you need and easily manage them all under one account. Go to crashplan.com/designbetter for 50% off your first year of CrashPlan. That's crashplan.com/designbetter, all one word, for 50% off your first year. Back up better with CrashPlan.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
And now, back to the show. Ben Clymer, welcome to Design Better.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I was sharing before we hit the record button that I'm a longtime Hodinkee reader, a big fan. I'm a customer. It's not logical, Ben, how excited and invested I am in watches. They are magnificent little machines that we wear on our wrists. And it doesn't make sense because timekeeping is a problem that's solved. It's a technical problem that's been solved for a long time.
A very long time.
Very long time. And we've gotten progressively better, yet we still have this romantic relationship with watches in particular. Could you unpack that for us? What's so special about these superfluous machines that we wear on our wrists?
First of all, thank you guys for having me here. It's a treat to talk about design and all the work that we put into making the things that we do make. So just thrilled to be here. But, to answer your question, you said it wonderfully, right? Like, this is totally superfluous. And I'm the first person to say that in any interview or anytime I'm really talking about watches at scale. Nobody needs this stuff. And I think that's why it's so fun. And I use the word fun purposely. Like, this is a passion. This is a hobby. I mean, it's my job. But I think the interest in watches is so unnecessary, like so remarkably unnecessary. That's what makes it so charming and so fun. And so, there is this idea that it tells you the time, but I guarantee you there's an iPhone in front of everybody on this call, or if not an iPhone, then a Mac or some computer that can tell you better time than any Rolex or Omega. But there's so much that goes into mechanical watchmaking, from the art, the engineering, the craftsmanship, of course, like the socio kind of political environment in which watches are born. Quite famously, the Omega Speedmaster was the watch that went to the moon. The date, just like you're wearing, was famously on the wrist of several politicians and presidents. There's so much about the choice that goes into watchmaking. And I think we're kind of at this last crossover generation of people that lived in an era prior to digital timekeeping. And to be clear, I was born in the 80s. So I was born in an era when the quartz crisis was raging. And to be clear, quartz won, right? Mechanical watchmaking is a fraction of what it was prior to the quartz. I don't know if you want to call it crisis. That's what people call it. The introduction of quartz technology. But there exists a generation, my parents' generation, certainly my grandparents' generation, where they were very much active in their lives when mechanical watchmaking was all that existed. And I think that is the thing to kind of really remember about mechanical watches was up until 1969, if you were driving a race car at Le Mans, if you were taking a dive deep down into the Mariana Trench, like quite famously Rolex accompanied some divers there, you were wearing a mechanical watch. And that's because nothing else existed that was able to withstand the pressures of that. And also the microprocessor just simply didn't exist. So, we didn't really get digital time telling until really we started seeing it around the mid 60s, at scale consumer facing products in the late 60s. And then, usurping the title of what you're actually looking at to tell time into the 70s and 80s. So you get this kind of nostalgia with a certain generation. And I think, I'm in my early 40s, born in the early 80s, but I was always drawn to that era of product, of object, whether it is a car, a piece of stereo equipment, a watch, a telephone, eyeglasses, whatever you want to insert here, that is what was appealing to me. So having those things that kind of bring you back to kind of, I don't want to say a simpler time, but it really was a simpler time, at least from my vantage point, is really nostalgic and fun. And it allows you to kind of reconnect with that era. And, I'll borrow a line from John Mayer, who's somebody that is often cited in the world of watches, at least on our site. Watches are an amazing way of reminding you of the person you never were. And I think for me, I grew up in a home that both my parents were public school teachers. I did not grow up. This is embarrassing, but I own a watch that is, in fact, more valuable than the home I grew up in, to give you an idea. So I did not come from a world of Rolex or Patek Philippe or fancy anything. But, I had a grandfather who was an entrepreneur and he had a Rolex. And, that idea of what I could become when he would let me wear his watch was really intoxicating to me. And I think even now I'm wearing a very high-end Swiss brand called Laurent Ferrier that this gentleman worked for Patek Philippe, which is kind of one of the holy grail watchmakers. And he was a race car driver at Le Mans. So how cool is that? I'm from Rochester, New York. The idea of working for this mega prestigious Swiss watch company and driving a vintage Porsche at Le Mans in the late 70s, that is so beyond what I could have comprehended as a young child or as even an older child in upstate New York. And watches really allow you to transport yourself into whoever you want to be.
Let's put a finer point on it, because I know that in the software space, especially in the Bay Area, which so many of our listeners are at software companies, and in the Bay Area, status symbols are generally frowned upon. If there's anything that's sort of particularly showy or signaling of wealth and success, there's a ton of wealth and success. It's just signaled in a very different way. But I think the general feeling of what a watch is for a lot of people, they think of branding, and we want to talk about that here in a minute. They think of Rolex and so forth as a signal, but it's something else. There's something considerably more than that I'd love for our listeners to look at differently. I think the reason why I am so attracted to watches is that they're a longer view of the human experience. There's just few objects that we own that connect us to the history that you just described transgenerationally. Like, how many transgenerational objects do each one of us own? They're just not that many. Like an instrument, it's just a few things.
I totally agree. And that's something that I often say when asked that question. And if you look around my office, there's a picture there from Entrepreneur Magazine of an Omega Speedmaster. That was my grandfather's. My grandfather is now long gone, passed away over 10 years ago, but he gave me that watch, and that was his watch. And he wore that. And it told him when to call my grandmother or when to call us or, when to go out to dinner or whatever. And it was his, and he wore it every day. And then he gave it to me, and now it's mine. And that inspired kind of me to start Hodinkee and many other things. But you're right. I mean, the multi-generational aspect of it is so powerful because there's nothing else. I mean, you can buy a great, finely tailored suit. You can even buy a wonderful car, a Porsche or a Mercedes or something that would, in theory, last, but it won't last like this, and it won't be on you and with you ever present the way that a watch is. And it also doesn't necessarily rely on you the same way that you rely on it. And I think the symbiotic connection between a mechanical watch and a man or woman is just unparalleled.
I want to go a little bit in the other direction. And we talked briefly before we started the recording that I'm kind of the watch neophyte in this conversation, for many years.
Again, you're much better off, trust me. Yeah.
My wife would probably say the same, compare notes with Aaron's. But, I had a G-Shock for many years because I'm a surfer and a diver. It's like the only thing that would hold up. To the same point, I never took it down to 100 meters or whatever extremes it was. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that kind of like almost storytelling aspect where you can envision yourself being one of these pioneers or being a race car driver. That side of the watch story, I think, is really interesting.
That's exactly it. I have great fantasies of what I would describe as being a gentleman driver, which is, kind of an affluent man, in my mind, is from 1940s, 1950s, dressed very dapper and piloting, a vintage Ferrari or Mercedes or BMW, whatever.
If you'd like to continue listening to this conversation, you'll need to subscribe at designbetterpodcast.com/subscribe. Once you do, you'll get access to every full-length episode, all ad-free, monthly AMAs with inspiring people in design and tech, and recordings of all our past AMAs. The podcast is available to everyone through our scholarship program. If you can't afford a subscription, just email us at subscriptions@thecuriositydepartment.com and we'll help you out. Your support makes Design Better possible. Invest in yourself and the design community by subscribing at designbetterpodcast.com.